October 15, 2024. Hard Rock Stadium, Miami. Marcus Reeves had protected 3 presidents and countless celebrities. 23 years of flawless service. That's exactly why they chose him to take the fall. 68,000 fans screaming. One 8-year-old boy slipping past the barriers. Security protocols demanded immediate intervention. Marcus raised his hand to signal the team. Then he saw the boy's eyes. The same desperate hope he'd seen in another child's face 15 years ago. The child he'd failed to save. Marcus made his choice. He let Diego Morales reach Messi. What happened in those 37 seconds of embrace would destroy 3 governments, expose a trafficking network spanning 2 decades, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's mercy. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The stadium lights blazed like interrogation lamps as Marcus watched Diego's small arms wrap around Messi's waist. Through his earpiece, static crackled with confusion from his team positioned around the field's perimeter. "Control, we have a breach in Section C. Orders?" The voice belonged to Hayes, Marcus's second-in-command, positioned near the tunnel entrance. Marcus pressed his finger to the comm unit, watching as Messi knelt to Diego's eye level. The boy's lips moved rapidly, words Marcus couldn't hear over the thunderous crowd, but the desperation in the child's posture was unmistakable. "Stand down, I have eyes on the situation. Sir, protocol requires—" I said, "Stand down." 15 years ago, Marcus had followed protocol. Senator Patricia Kellerman's 8-year-old daughter, Emma, had been snatched from a campaign event in broad daylight while Marcus hesitated for 3 crucial seconds, waiting for radio confirmation before pursuing the kidnappers through a crowd. Those 3 seconds had cost a little girl her life, and Marcus his federal career. Not again. Diego pulled something from his pocket, a worn photograph that he pressed into Messi's hands. Even from 30 yards away, Marcus could see the soccer star's expression shift from surprise to something deeper. Compassion, recognition of a child carrying weight far beyond his years. The crowd's roar intensified as fans realized what was happening. Cell phones emerged like fireflies, thousands of cameras capturing every angle. Marcus's jaw tightened. Each recording was a security nightmare, but some moments transcended protocol. "Boss, we've got movement in the VIP boxes." Hayes's voice carried new urgency. "Unidentified male, Section 301, Row A. He's filming with professional equipment." Marcus's eyes snapped to the luxury suites. Through his binoculars, he spotted the man. Mid-40s, expensive suit, camera lens worth more than most people's cars. But it wasn't the equipment that made Marcus's blood freeze. It was the surgical scar running from the man's left ear to his collar. A scar Marcus had last seen in a classified file 15 years ago. Dmitry Kozlov, arms dealer, human trafficker. The ghost who'd vanished after Emma Kellerman's murder. Hayes, lock down Section 301 immediately. Detain the male in Row A for questioning. Copy that. Marcus forced himself to remain calm, but his mind raced through possibilities. Kozlov's presence couldn't be coincidence. The Russian had spent 15 years in the shadows, building an empire on misery. He didn't surface for autographs. On the field, Diego stepped back from Messi, tears streaming down his face. The boy raised his hand in a small wave before turning toward the tunnel where stadium security waited to escort him out. Standard procedure. No arrests, no charges. Just a gentle removal and a story that would trend on social media for weeks. But as Diego walked past Marcus, something made him look down at the child's wrist. A medical bracelet, partially hidden by his oversized jersey sleeve. Marcus had seen thousands of them during hospital visits with other clients. This one was different. The plastic was too new, too pristine for a child supposedly fighting cancer for months. "Control to base," Marcus spoke quietly into his comm. "Run a facial recognition on our field visitor. Full background check. Priority 1. On it, boss." The crowd began to settle as Messi returned to his teammates, but Marcus's unease intensified. 37 seconds. That's how long the encounter had lasted. In his experience, genuine moments between celebrities and fans were either much shorter, a quick handshake, or much longer, with extended conversation. 37 seconds felt choreographed. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The boy delivered the package. "Your move, Marcus." Every muscle in Marcus's body tensed. The message could only mean one thing. He'd been played. Diego wasn't a dying fan seeking a moment of joy. He was a pawn in something much larger. Marcus looked toward the tunnel where Diego had disappeared, then up at Section 301 where his team was converging on Kozlov's position. The pieces of a puzzle he didn't yet understand were falling into place around him. "Boss, we've got a problem." Hayes' voice cut through the static. "Our suspect in 301 is gone, vanished, but he left something behind." "What kind of something?" "A manila envelope. Your name's on it." The stadium's celebratory atmosphere suddenly felt suffocating. Marcus had walked into a trap 15 years in the making, and he'd done exactly what they'd wanted him to do. He'd shown mercy to a child, just as he'd failed to do years ago. The guilt that had driven every decision since Emma Kellerman's death had been weaponized against him. His phone buzzed again. "Same unknown number. Check the photograph the boy gave Messi. You have 48 hours. Marcus's hand moved instinctively to his weapon as he scanned the crowd with new eyes. How many faces in those 68,000 belonged to Kozlov's network? How long had they been watching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy him? The most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's mercy. Now Marcus understood why they'd chosen those words for the opening. His compassion had just signed his death warrant. Marcus's fingers trembled as he pocketed his phone, the weight of 15 years crashing down on him like stadium lights suddenly extinguished. The celebratory roar of 68,000 fans became white noise, a distant ocean he was drowning beneath. His breath came in controlled measures, a technique drilled into him during his Secret Service days, back when protecting lives meant following orders, not making impossible choices in split seconds that haunted you forever. The smell of stadium nachos and spilled beer mixed with the October humidity. But all Marcus could taste was the metallic tang of fear. Not for himself, he'd made peace with his own mortality years ago, but for the people who still believed in him despite his failures. Sarah, his daughter Katie, his team. They'd all suffer when this carefully orchestrated nightmare reached its crescendo. "Boss, should I bring you the envelope?" Hayes' voice crackled through the earpiece, cutting through Marcus's spiraling thoughts. "Negative. Seal off the entire section and call in the bomb squad. Don't touch anything else." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to remember why he'd chosen this life after the federal government had quietly asked for his resignation. The guilt over Emma Kellerman had eaten him alive for months, turning whiskey into breakfast and nightmares into nightly companions. But Sarah, sweet, stubborn Sarah, had refused to let him disappear into self-destruction. She'd been a trauma counselor then, working with victims of violent crime. They'd met during his mandatory psychological evaluation. Professional boundaries be damned. She saw through his carefully constructed walls with surgical precision, finding the man beneath the failure. When she'd suggested he channel his protective instincts into private security, it felt like resurrection. "You can't save everyone, Marcus," she'd told him during one of their early conversations over coffee that had stretched past midnight. "But you can choose who to fight for." For 15 years he'd fought for athletes, celebrities, politicians, people whose lives sparkled in public but often crumbled in private. He'd become their shield against stalkers, kidnappers, and the general madness that fame attracted. It was honest work, meaningful work, work that let him sleep at night, until tonight. The stadium's massive video board replayed highlights from Messi's career, each goal a reminder of why this farewell tour mattered to millions. Marcus watched the Argentine's face on the giant screen, joy mixed with melancholy, a man saying goodbye to the thing that defined him. There was something pure about it, something worth protecting. His phone rang. Sarah's contact photo appeared, her smile captured during last month's weekend getaway to Key Largo, sun-kissed and genuinely happy. Marcus's chest tightened. She didn't know about Kozlov, about the photograph, about any of it. In her world, her husband was simply working another high-profile event, probably complaining about the logistics of crowd control and the terrible stadium coffee. "Hey, beautiful. Don't beautiful me, Marcus Reeves. Katie's been asking when Daddy's coming home since 6 o'clock. You promised her bedtime stories, remember? Marcus glanced at his watch. 9:47 p.m. His daughter would be fighting sleep, hoping he'd walk through their front door in time to read about princesses and dragons. At 7 years old, Katie still believed her father was invincible, a real-life superhero who kept bad people away from good people. The innocence in her dark eyes, eyes that mirrored his own, was the most precious thing in his universe. Tell our princess I'm wrapping up here. 20 minutes, tops, a lie. He'd be lucky to see his family before dawn, if Kozlov's deadline allowed him to see them at all. Marcus, Sarah's voice softened, carrying that intuitive concern that had drawn him to her years ago. Everything okay? You sound just tired. Long day. Another lie. But how could he explain that their quiet suburban life, the mortgage on their Coral Gables home, Saturday morning pancakes, Katie's soccer games, was about to be shattered by ghosts from his past? Sarah had married a broken man who'd found redemption. She'd signed up for the occasional late night and the stress of high-profile assignments. She hadn't signed up for this. I love you, he said, meaning it more than he'd ever meant anything. I love you too. Drive safely. The line went dead, leaving Marcus alone with the weight of what he stood to lose. His team continued their coordinated sweep of Section 301, professional voices reporting negative findings through his earpiece. But Kozlov was gone, vanished like smoke, leaving only questions and a manila envelope that might as well be a ticking bomb. Marcus looked across the field where groundskeepers had begun their post-game routine, erasing the evidence of tonight's match. Soon, this would all be memory, except for the photograph Diego had delivered and whatever message Kozlov wanted him to find. 47 hours and counting. The hunt had begun. The envelope waited in Marcus's hotel suite like a coiled snake, untouched since the bomb squad had cleared it 2 hours earlier. He'd moved Sarah and Katie to her sister's house in Tampa with a hastily constructed lie about a potential security threat, vague enough to avoid questions, specific enough to ensure compliance. The fear in Sarah's voice as she'd packed Katie's overnight bag would haunt him later. For now, it was just another weight added to the growing pile. Marcus poured 3 fingers of bourbon, Maker's Mark, the same brand he'd sworn off after Emma Kellerman, and set it on the nightstand without drinking. The ritual mattered more than the consumption, a reminder of how far he'd fallen before and how far he could fall again. The manila envelope lay on the bed, his name written in block letters that triggered a memory he'd buried deep. The handwriting belonged to someone from his Secret Service days, someone who'd known him when failure wasn't yet his defining characteristic. Inside, he found 3 items that made his bourbon glass irrelevant. The first was the photograph Diego had given Messi. Not a fan photo as he'd assumed, but a surveillance image of Marcus himself, taken outside Emma Kellerman's memorial service 15 years ago. He remembered that day with crystalline clarity, standing in the rain, watching from a distance as they buried the 8-year-old girl his hesitation had killed. The photo captured him in profile, tears mixing with October drizzle, a broken man seeking absolution he'd never receive. Someone had been watching him even then. Someone had documented his grief and filed it away for future use. The second item was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery, the kind used by people who believed paper quality reflected character. Marcus recognized the letterhead immediately. Kellerman and Associates, the senator's law firm. But Senator Patricia Kellerman had died 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer, taking her secrets to the grave, or so Marcus had believed. Marcus, if you're reading this, it means my illness has taken me, and the wolves I've kept at bay are finally circling. What I'm about to tell you will destroy everything you think you know about Emma's death, but you deserve the truth after carrying my guilt for 15 years. Emma wasn't killed by opportunistic kidnappers. She was murdered by people I trusted, people who wanted to send me a message about a vote I was planning to cast. The Human Trafficking Bill, H.R. 2847. I was going to expose a network that reached into the highest levels of government. They took my baby to show me the price of honesty. You didn't fail that day, Marcus. I did. I sacrificed my daughter's life rather than risk my own, and I let you believe it was your fault because it was easier than admitting I knew who had taken her. The 3 seconds you hesitated wouldn't have mattered. They were already gone, already lost to me the moment I chose politics over family. The man who orchestrated Emma's death is named Dmitry Kozlov. By now, he's found you. He's patient, methodical. He's spent years building a network that trades in human misery, and he's used my silence to grow stronger. The children you think you're protecting, Diego Juan Morales isn't the first, won't be the last. They're all pieces in his game, trained from birth to be invisible weapons. In my safe deposit box at First National, you'll find everything: bank records, communications, names. Box 247. The key is taped under Emma's headstone, left side. My final confession to my daughter's memory. I'm sorry, Marcus. For Emma. For you. For the man you could have been if I'd had the courage to tell the truth. Patricia Kellerman, or P.S. He's coming for Messi to prove he can reach anyone, anywhere. But Messi isn't the real target. You are. This has always been about you. Marcus's hands shook as he set the letter down. 15 years of self-hatred, therapy sessions, sleepless nights, and carefully reconstructed purpose, all of it built on a lie. He hadn't failed Emma Kellerman. Her own mother had. The third item was a burner phone, its screen already glowing with an incoming call. Marcus stared at it for 10 seconds before answering. Hello, Marcus. The voice carried a slight Russian accent, cultured and cold. Did you enjoy Patricia's bedtime story? Kozlov, you always were direct. I admired that about you, even as it made you so easy to manipulate. Do you understand now why I chose Diego? Why I needed you to see the photograph, feel the weight of choice? History doesn't repeat, Marcus. We make it repeat. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. To prove that mercy is weakness, that good men are just bad men waiting for the right pressure. You protected a child tonight. Tomorrow that compassion will destroy everything you've built. The line went dead. Marcus dropped the phone and reached for the bourbon, draining the glass in one burning swallow. The alcohol couldn't wash away the taste of truth, bitter and sharp like blood in his mouth. His old life was already gone, erased the moment he'd opened that envelope. What remained was the hunt, and this time Marcus knew exactly who was prey. Marcus sat in the darkness of his hotel suite, the empty bourbon glass catching fragments of Miami's neon skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The letter from Patricia Kellerman lay scattered across the bed like pieces of a shattered mirror, each paragraph reflecting a different version of the truth he'd carried for 15 years. He should call someone. The FBI, his old contacts at Secret Service. Anyone with the authority to hunt down Kozlov's network and put an end to this nightmare. Instead, Marcus found himself reaching for his laptop, fingers moving with muscle memory to access databases he'd promised himself he'd never use again. The federal password still worked. Marcus wasn't surprised. Bureaucratic inefficiency had always been the government's most reliable trait. Within minutes, he was scrolling through classified files on Dmitry Kozlov, watching a digital ghost materialize from redacted paragraphs and grainy surveillance photos. The Russian had been busy during his 15-year absence from Marcus's life. Arms deals in Eastern Europe, human trafficking routes through South America, a network that stretched across 3 continents, built on the foundation of Emma Kellerman's silence. Every crime scene photo, every victim statement, every failed investigation pointed to the same conclusion: Kozlov had become untouchable. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "Stop looking. You won't like what you find." His fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The smart move was to close the laptop, pack his bags, and disappear with Sarah and Katie. Change their names, move somewhere Kozlov's reach couldn't extend. Live quietly, die quietly. Let someone else fight monsters. But Emma Kellerman's memorial photo stared at him from the bed, and behind it, he saw Diego's face. Not the trained weapon Kozlov had crafted, but the 8-year-old boy who'd been stolen from whatever family had loved him first. How many others were out there? How many children had become pawns in games they couldn't understand? The laptop screen flickered, and suddenly Marcus wasn't alone anymore. A video call window opened without his permission, revealing a face he'd hoped never to see again. Dmitry Kozlov looked exactly as Marcus remembered. Sharp cheekbones, steel gray eyes, the surgical scar that ran from ear to collar like a question mark carved in flesh. You were always predictable, Marcus. Even now, you choose investigation over self-preservation. Where are you?" Kozlov's smile carried no warmth. "Closer than you think. Farther than you can reach. Geography is irrelevant when you own the right people." The camera angle shifted, revealing a second figure in the shadows behind Kozlov. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. Detective Ray Castillo from Miami Metro. The same Ray Castillo who'd been feeding Marcus information about local threats for the past 5 years. The same Ray who knew about Sarah's sister in Tampa, about Katie's school schedule, about every safe house Marcus had ever used. "Hello, Marcus." Ray's voice carried shame wrapped in resignation. "I'm sorry it came to this. How long?" Marcus's question came out as a whisper. "Since the beginning," Kozlov answered for him. "Detective Castillo has been quite helpful in monitoring your movements, your clients, your family's routines. Amazing how much a man will sacrifice when his daughter's life hangs in the balance." The camera panned to show a young woman tied to a chair, Ray's daughter Maria, whom Marcus had met at department barbecues. She was unconscious but breathing, her nursing scrubs torn and bloodied. A professional job designed to leave no doubt about Kozlov's reach. "You have 36 hours, Kozlov continued. "Tomorrow night, Messi will attend the charity gala at the Fontainebleau. You will be there, because running would mean abandoning your principles. During the event, you will receive final instructions. Follow them precisely, and Detective Castillo's daughter lives. Deviate from the plan." He shrugged. "Well, you understand consequences better than most." The screen went black, leaving Marcus alone with the weight of impossible choices. Outside his window, Miami pulsed with oblivious life. Tourists stumbling between bars, teenagers racing expensive cars down Ocean Drive, normal people living normal lives that wouldn't be shattered by morning. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone to call Sarah, then stopped. What could he tell her? That their carefully constructed happiness was built on quicksand? That the man she'd helped rebuild was about to crumble again, and this time he might take her and Katie down with him? Instead, he called his team leader. "Hayes, it's Marcus. Cancel all leave. Full team briefing at 0600. We're dealing with a credible threat against the principal." "Copy that, boss." "Anything specific I should know?" Marcus looked at the scattered evidence of his destroyed assumptions. Patricia Kellerman's confession, the surveillance photo, the laptop still glowing with classified files he shouldn't possess. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We're walking into a war zone, and I'm not sure who's shooting at us." As if sudden movement might detonate the secrets it contained. The hotel suite felt smaller now, walls pressing inward with each revelation. 35 hours and 43 minutes until the Fontainebleau Gala. He'd counted every tick of the digital clock since ending the call with Hayes. The bourbon bottle beckoned from the minibar, promising temporary amnesia. Instead, Marcus walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cool glass, watching Miami's late-night theater play out 40 floors below. A couple argued outside a nightclub, their gestures animated by alcohol and hurt feelings. A homeless veteran, Marcus recognized the rigid posture from a dozen other cities, pushed a shopping cart loaded with everything he owned. Normal people with normal problems, blissfully unaware that their world balanced on the decisions of broken men in expensive hotel rooms. His reflection stared back from the glass, and for a moment, Marcus saw his father's face superimposed over his own. Colonel James Reeves, career military, had taught his son that honor mattered more than life, that some principles were worth dying for. The old man had died believing his boy was a hero, Secret Service protecting senators and presidents. He'd never known about Emma Kellerman, never learned that his son's career had ended in disgrace and buried truths. "What would you do, Dad?" Marcus whispered to the ghost in the glass. But he already knew. His father would have chosen duty over family, country over comfort. The colonel had missed Christmas mornings, birthday parties, school plays, all sacrificed on the altar of service. It had cost him his marriage, his relationship with his son, ultimately his peace. Honor was expensive, and someone always paid the price. Marcus pulled out his personal phone and scrolled to Sarah's contact. Her last text glowed on the screen. "Katie fell asleep clutching your picture. She says you're fighting dragons. Love you both." The photo attachment showed his daughter curled around a framed picture from last year's vacation. Marcus teaching her to cast a fishing line while Sarah laughed at their synchronized concentration. Katie's face was peaceful in sleep, trusting that Daddy would come home safely because Daddy always came home safely. Except tonight, safety was an illusion Kozlov had shattered with surgical precision. Marcus's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He started typing a dozen different messages, explanations, apologies, love letters that could serve as final words. Each time, he deleted the text before sending. What comfort could he offer that wouldn't sound like goodbye? What truth could he share that wouldn't destroy the woman who'd spent 15 years believing in his redemption? The burner phone Kozlov had included buzzed against the nightstand. A new text, "Second thoughts are natural. Review the attached file." The attachment was a video, 37 seconds of security footage from Katie's elementary school. His daughter emerged from the building with her usual post-school energy, backpack bouncing as she skipped toward the pickup line. The timestamp showed today, 3:47 p.m., 40 minutes before Marcus had even met Diego Morales. In the video, a man in maintenance coveralls worked near the school's main entrance, face obscured but body language alert, predatory. As Katie passed, he lifted his head just enough for the camera to catch his profile. Marcus recognized him from the federal database. Viktor Petrov, one of Kozlov's lieutenants, responsible for 3 confirmed kills and twice as many disappearances. The message was crystal clear. Kozlov's reach extended everywhere, had always extended everywhere. The Russian hadn't started planning this operation today or yesterday or even last month. This was years in the making, a web spun with infinite patience around every person Marcus had learned to love. Another text arrived. "Your daughter has beautiful eyes, so much like yours. It would be unfortunate if she inherited your talent for poor decisions." Marcus threw the burner phone against the wall, watching it explode into electronic fragments. The gesture provided no relief. Kozlov had other ways to contact him, other ways to apply pressure. The video proved that running wasn't an option, that geography offered no protection against an enemy who thought in decades rather than days. He sank onto the bed, Patricia Kellerman's letter crinkling beneath his weight. The dead senator's words echoed in his mind. "This has always been about you. Not about Messi, not about the trafficking network, not even about Diego's manipulated innocence. This elaborate choreography existed for one purpose, to force Marcus Reeves to choose between 2 impossible loyalties. Save Maria Castillo by following Kozlov's instructions, become complicit in whatever horror the Russian had planned for the gala, refuse and watch innocents die for his principles. Either choice would destroy him, would prove Kozlov's thesis that good men were simply bad men waiting for sufficient pressure. But as Marcus stared at his daughter's sleeping face on his phone screen, he realized Kozlov had made one crucial miscalculation. The Russian assumed honor was Marcus's weakness. That rigid morality would paralyze him when forced to choose between competing values. Kozlov was wrong. Marcus's weakness was love, and love didn't follow rules. The dragon fight his daughter had imagined was about to become terrifyingly real. Marcus sat motionless for 5 minutes, his daughter's image burned into his retinas like a camera flash. The weight of Kozlov's miscalculations settled around him, not relief but clarity. The Russian had orchestrated everything with surgical precision, but surgical precision relied on knowing your subject's anatomy. Kozlov knew Marcus Reeves, the federal agent, the man who'd frozen when Emma Kellerman needed him most. He didn't know Marcus Reeves, the father, the man who'd been forged in different fires. The laptop still glowed with classified files. Marcus opened a new search, this time focusing not on Kozlov's network but on its foundation, the children. Diego Morales wasn't listed in any missing persons database, but Marcus found him anyway, buried in immigration records under 3 different names. Real birthplace, Guatemala. Parents, deceased. Legal status, manufactured. But it was the medical records that made Marcus's blood freeze. Terminal cancer. Real, not fabricated. Stage 4 neuroblastoma. Prognosis measured in weeks, not months. Kozlov hadn't just stolen a child and trained him as a weapon. He'd deliberately chosen a dying boy, knowing that Marcus's conscience would make him hesitate, that the countdown of a terminal diagnosis would add unbearable weight to every decision. The monster's psychology became crystal clear. Use the child's genuine suffering to guarantee Marcus's paralysis. Let a dying boy have his moment with his hero, because what kind of man would deny that? And in that moment of compassion, position everyone for whatever endgame Kozlov had planned. Marcus opened another file, cross-referencing the gala's security arrangements with known trafficking routes. The Fontainebleau wasn't just hosting a charity dinner, it was an auction house for human cargo, disguised as philanthropic theater. Messi's presence would attract international attention, media coverage, high-profile donors. Perfect camouflage for moving product across borders. But none of that explained why Marcus was essential to the plan. Kozlov could have arranged the trafficking operation without involving him, could have eliminated Messi without this elaborate psychological torture. The Russian had spent 15 years and enormous resources to put Marcus in this specific position, which meant the realization hit him like a physical blow. Marcus wasn't being recruited for the job, he was being framed for it. His hands flew across the keyboard, accessing federal personnel files with passwords that shouldn't still work but did. There it was, buried in classified updates, Marcus Reeves, flagged by multiple agencies as a potential security risk. The notation was recent, dated just 3 days ago. Someone with high-level access had planted evidence in his federal record: suspicious financial transfers, communications with known criminals, psychological evaluations questioning his stability. Kozlov wasn't planning to use Marcus to kill Messi. He was planning to have Messi killed while Marcus was present, armed, and psychologically compromised. The perfect patsy, already discredited in official files, already carrying the weight of past failures. When the assassination occurred, every piece of evidence would point to the broken ex-agent who'd finally snapped under pressure. The genius was horrifying in its simplicity. Marcus's team would be positioned to protect Messi, which meant they'd have access, opportunity, and weapons. When Kozlov's real shooter eliminated the target, Marcus would be standing close enough to have done it himself. His classified database searches tonight would be discovered later, proving premeditation. Ray Castillo's testimony would confirm Marcus's recent erratic behavior, his obsession with past failures. Even Marcus's decision to let Diego hug Messi would be twisted as evidence, proof that he'd compromised security protocols, that his judgment was fatally flawed. The boy's terminal diagnosis would be revealed as emotional manipulation, showing how easily Marcus could be controlled by his conscience. But Kozlov had made one critical error. He'd shown Marcus the framework too early, revealed too much of his methodology in his arrogance. The Russian believed he understood his opponent, had mapped every psychological pressure point. That confidence had made him sloppy. Marcus closed the laptop and picked up his personal phone. Instead of calling Sarah, he scrolled to a contact he hadn't used in 8 years, Elena Vasquez, his former partner at Secret Service. She'd gone freelance after a congressional budget cut eliminated her position, now worked private intelligence for clients who paid better than Uncle Sam. Marcus, Jesus, do you know what time it is? I need a favor, Elena. Off the books, cash payment, no questions. I'm listening. Dmitry Kozlov. I need everything: current location, operational network, financial backing, and I need it by morning. The line went quiet. When Elena spoke again, her voice carried the weight of professional recognition. That's not a favor, Marcus. That's a death wish. Kozlov's been untouchable for years. He made it personal. They always do. That's why they're dangerous. Will you help me? Another pause. Standard rate is 50,000 for a target that hot. Done. Marcus, whatever you're planning, consider the cost. Some dragons eat the night. He ended the call and looked at his daughter's photo one more time. Katie's peaceful face reminded him of Emma Kellerman, another innocent destroyed by adult choices. The difference was that this time, Marcus knew exactly who the monster was, and this time, he wasn't going to hesitate. The clock read 4:17 a.m. when Marcus finally allowed himself to close his eyes, but sleep remained elusive. Every time he drifted toward unconsciousness, Diego's face materialized, not the trained weapon Kozlov had crafted, but the dying 8-year-old who genuinely smiled when Messi signed his jersey. The boy was real beneath the manipulation, which made everything infinitely worse. Marcus rose and walked to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. The mirror reflected a man he barely recognized, hollow-eyed, stubbled, carrying the weight of decisions that shouldn't belong to any single person. His father's ghost lingered in the reflection, and for once, Marcus didn't flinch away from the resemblance. The burner phone fragments still littered the carpet where he'd thrown them, but Kozlov's message had already served its purpose. The Russian didn't need constant communication now. He'd demonstrated his reach, established the stakes, wound the mechanism of Marcus's conscience like a spring under pressure. At 5:30 a.m., Marcus's team phone buzzed. Elena Vasquez had worked faster than expected. "I've got your intel." Her voice carried exhaustion and concern. "Kozlov's not just untouchable, he's protected. Someone very high up has been running interference for his operations." "How high?" "Senate Intelligence Committee level. Maybe higher. The protection orders are buried deep, but they're there. Marcus, whatever this is about, you're walking into a kill box. Send me everything you found. Already in your encrypted folder." "But Marcus," Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. "The financial backing for Kozlov's network traces back to some very familiar accounts. Names from your past, people who should have been allies 15 years ago." Marcus felt the last pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Emma Kellerman's kidnapping was never about ransom. The girl was leverage against her father's committee vote on trafficking legislation. When you disrupted their timeline, they had to eliminate her to protect the larger operation. The hotel room spun around Marcus as 15 years of guilt realigned into fury. Emma Kellerman hadn't died because he'd hesitated. She'd died because he'd gotten too close to exposing the truth, because his competence had threatened their carefully constructed conspiracy. Who gave the kill order? That's where it gets complicated. The paper trail goes cold, but there's a pattern. Every major trafficking case that's been buried, every investigation that's hit bureaucratic walls, they all trace back to the same administrative decisions. Someone's been protecting this network since before Emma died. Marcus processed this information with mechanical precision, emotion locked away in the same compartment where he'd stored his guilt. "Did you find Kozlov's current location?" "He's mobile, but his operational base is in Miami. I've got 3 possible safe houses, all purchased through shell companies in the last 6 months. Marcus, this entire operation was designed specifically for you. Every detail, every pressure point, it's all tailored to your psychological profile. Send me the addresses." "Marcus, send them." The line went dead. Within minutes, Marcus's encrypted folder contained enough intelligence to plan a war. Kozlov had been thorough, but so had Elena. The Russians' network was extensive but not impenetrable, protected but not invisible. Marcus opened his laptop one final time and began typing. Not a message to Kozlov or his handlers, but a detailed letter to Sarah. Everything. The conspiracy, the frame job, the truth about Emma Kellerman, the impossible choice he now faced. If tonight went wrong, she would need to understand why he'd made certain decisions, why protecting their family had required destroying the man she'd loved back to life. "By the time you read this," he wrote, "everything will be over. I need you to know that every choice I made was about protecting you and Katie. The man who came home to you 15 years ago was broken, but you helped me believe I could be worthy of forgiveness. That belief gave me 15 years of happiness I never deserved. If I don't make it home, take Katie and disappear. Elena Vasquez will help. She owes me that much. Change your names. Move somewhere far from all of this. Let Katie remember her father as the man who taught her to fish, not the man who fought dragons. I love you both more than honor, more than duty, more than the weight of old failures. That love is what's going to save us all." He encrypted the letter with instructions to send automatically if he didn't check in by midnight. Then Marcus began the methodical process of preparing for war. Checking weapons, reviewing floor plans, calculating angles and distances, and the price of justice measured in bullets. Outside his window, Miami awakened to another day of oblivious normalcy. In 18 hours, the Fontainebleau Gala would begin, and with it, the final act of a conspiracy 15 years in the making. Dmitry Kozlov believed he'd mapped every psychological pressure point, anticipated every possible response. Tonight, he would learn the difference between a broken federal agent and a father with nothing left to lose. The dragon fight was about to begin, and Marcus intended to be the one walking away from the flames. The first safe-house address led Marcus through Miami's pre-dawn streets to a warehouse district where shadows pooled between abandoned buildings like spilled ink. He parked 6 blocks away and approached on foot, every instinct honed by 15 years of protection details, screaming that this felt wrong, too quiet, too convenient, too much like walking into Kozlov's waiting arms. The warehouse sat dark against the lightening sky, but Marcus spotted the telltale signs of occupation: tire tracks in the gravel, cigarette butts near the loading dock, the faint electronic hum of active surveillance equipment. He circled the perimeter twice, cataloging entry points and escape routes with muscle memory that transcended conscious thought. Then he saw the van. Parked behind a chain-link fence, partially concealed by industrial dumpsters, sat the same white panel van from the stadium security footage. Even from a distance, Marcus could make out the modifications: tinted windows, reinforced doors, communications equipment bristling from the roof like electronic antennae. But it was the figure standing beside the van that made Marcus's blood freeze. Diego Morales. Not the dying child who'd embraced Messi, but something darker. The boy moved with adult purpose, speaking into a radio with the crisp diction of someone far older than 8. Even his posture had changed. Shoulders straight, head alert, eyes scanning the warehouse perimeter with tactical awareness that belonged in special forces training, not pediatric oncology. Marcus crouched behind a concrete barrier and watched Kozlov's greatest deception reveal itself. The terminal cancer was real. Elena's intel confirmed that. But everything else about Diego Morales was performance. The shy stammer, the wide-eyed wonder, the trembling excitement at meeting his hero. All calculated theater designed to manipulate Marcus's conscience at precisely the right moment. The boy spoke again into his radio, and Marcus caught fragments: target acquired visual on secondary perimeter, thermal shows single approach vector, recommend activation of contingency protocol. Diego wasn't just bait, he was operational command. The warehouse's main door opened, and Dmitry Kozlov stepped into the gray morning light. Even at 50 yards, the Russian's presence commanded attention. Tall, silver-haired, moving with the fluid confidence of a man who'd spent decades orchestrating chaos from comfortable distances. He approached Diego with something resembling paternal affection, ruffling the boy's hair in a gesture that would have seemed tender if Marcus hadn't known the truth. "Outstanding work, little soldier." Kozlov's voice carried clearly across the empty lot. "Our broken night arrived exactly when you predicted." Diego smiled. Not the innocent joy Marcus remembered from the stadium, but cold satisfaction. "He's 50 meters northwest behind the concrete barriers. Amateur positioning. I could have eliminated him from the van. Patience. Mr. Reeves has served our purposes beautifully, but we're not finished with him yet." Kozlov checked his watch. "The gala begins in 12 hours. By tomorrow morning, the world will remember Marcus Reeves as the man who assassinated Lionel Messi. His guilt over past failures will provide perfect psychological motivation for the crime. And after? After, you disappear. New identity, new medical treatment in Switzerland, new life far from this ugliness. You've earned your freedom, Diego." The boy nodded with professional acceptance, but Marcus caught something else in his expression. Doubt, perhaps even fear. Whatever Kozlov had promised, Diego was intelligent enough to understand that witnesses were liabilities, that children who knew too much rarely lived to enjoy their rewards. Marcus shifted his weight, preparing to move closer, when his phone vibrated silently against his chest. A text message from an unknown number: "Mr. Reeves. I believe we should speak directly. The boy and I will wait inside. Come alone, unarmed, and we can discuss terms like civilized men." Kozlov was looking directly at Marcus's hiding spot when he checked his phone. The Russian smiled and waved, a mockingly casual gesture that confirmed Marcus's worst fear. This wasn't surveillance, it was invitation. The warehouse district, the exposed positions, the overheard conversation, all of it deliberately orchestrated to draw Marcus into direct confrontation. But why? Kozlov already held every advantage. He had Diego, had the frame job in place, had 15 years of careful planning reaching fruition. What could he possibly gain from face-to-face contact with his target? The answer came with chilling clarity. Marcus wasn't here to disrupt Kozlov's plan. He was here to complete it. The Russian needed his psychological state documented, needed witnesses to his instability, needed evidence that Marcus Reeves had descended into dangerous obsession. This meeting would be recorded, analyzed, used to support the narrative that a broken ex-agent had finally snapped completely. Diego was already walking toward the warehouse entrance, his child's body moving with eerie adult purpose. Kozlov followed, pausing at the threshold to offer Marcus one final wave. The invitation was clear. The trap was set. And somewhere in Miami, Sarah was waking up to make breakfast for a daughter whose father might not come home. Marcus checked his sidearm and started walking toward the warehouse. The dragon had finally shown its true face. Marcus stepped across the warehouse threshold knowing he was walking into his own execution, but clarity had replaced fear. The cavernous space stretched before him, shipping containers arranged like a maze, overhead lights casting harsh shadows that could conceal a dozen shooters. Kozlov waited in the center, hands clasped behind his back like a professor preparing to deliver a lecture. Diego stood beside him, no longer bothering to maintain his childish facade. "Punctual as always, Mr. Reeves." Kozlov's accent carried cultured refinement that made his words more disturbing. 15 years I have studied you. Your psychological profiles, your tactical responses, your beautiful, predictable conscience. You are exactly as advertised. Let the boy go. Marcus kept his hands visible, weapon holstered. "This is between us." Kozlov laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The boy? You still don't understand, do you? Diego chose this life. Cancer is a powerful motivator. When death is certain, children become remarkably adaptable to alternative arrangements." Diego's eyes held ancient sadness that belonged on no 8-year-old's face. "My family needed money for treatment, Mr. Reeves." Mr. Kozlov offered hope. Hope. Marcus tasted bile. "He offered you a gun and called it hope." "Hope comes in many forms," Kozlov said. For Diego, hope was 2 years of the finest medical care money could buy, plus security for his family. For you, hope was the chance to finally prove you weren't the coward who let Emma Kellerman die. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he forced himself to remain steady. Emma died because you needed her dead. Emma died because her father couldn't be persuaded through conventional means. But her death served a greater purpose. It broke you precisely enough to be useful later. Kozlov began circling, predator assessing prey. "Do you know what I admired most about your psychological collapse? The way you blamed yourself for circumstances entirely beyond your control. Such exquisite self-destruction." Marcus watched Diego from his peripheral vision. The boy's radio crackled softly, voices coordinating positions. The trap was larger than just this warehouse. "The gala tonight," Marcus said. "You never intended to frame me for killing Messi." "Oh, but I did. You'll be found with the murder weapon, your fingerprints on the trigger, your classified database searches proving premeditation. The perfect culmination of a 15-year descent into madness." Kozlov's smile widened. "The beautiful irony is that you'll actually pull the trigger. I would never." "Not willingly. But Diego's medical condition provides such compelling leverage. When you realize that refusing my instructions means watching an 8-year-old die slowly and painfully, your conscience will make the choice for you. You'll trade one life for another, convinced you're saving an innocent child." The pieces finally clicked into place. Marcus wasn't just the patsy. He was the weapon. Kozlov had engineered a scenario where Marcus's own protective instincts would force him to become a killer. "You're wrong." Marcus met Kozlov's eyes directly. "I already sent everything to Elena Vasquez. Your network, your financial backers, the truth about Emma. If I don't check in tonight, it all goes public." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Kozlov's features. "Bluffing. You're too isolated to have compiled significant intelligence." Senator Harrison's committee approved the trafficking legislation Emma's father opposed, the same committee that's been protecting your operations for 15 years. Elena traced the money, the votes, the administrative interference. Your dragon has too many heads, Dmitri. Cut one off. The others start turning on each other. Diego stepped forward, hand moving to his radio. But instead of calling for backup, he spoke directly to Marcus. Is it true? About the senator? Yes. Marcus kept his voice gentle, despite everything. You were never going to Switzerland, Diego. Dead witnesses can't testify. The boy's tactical composure finally cracked, revealing the terrified child beneath. Kozlov's hand moved toward his jacket, but Marcus was already drawing his sidearm. Don't. Marcus's weapon centered on Kozlov's chest. It's over. You think killing me ends this? I'm one small part of something vast. Maybe, but small parts matter. Marcus thought of Emma Kellerman, of his daughter Katie, of every innocent destroyed by men who treated children as expendable resources. Sometimes dragons die one scale at a time. The warehouse erupted in sirens as Elena's backup plan activated. FBI tactical units surrounding the building, helicopters overhead, 15 years of carefully buried evidence finally surfacing into harsh daylight. Kozlov raised his hands, still smiling. You've won nothing, Mr. Reeves. This network will rebuild, adapt, continue. Evil is more persistent than justice, probably. Marcus kept his weapon trained steady, but not today. As federal agents flooded the warehouse, Marcus knelt beside Diego. The boy was crying now. Finally, authentically 8 years old and afraid. It's going to be okay, Marcus whispered, knowing it wasn't true but needing to say it anyway. Some promises were worth making even when they couldn't be kept. The dragon was dead, but the night had learned that victory and peace were different things entirely.